tonight on First at 9 this Monday, the 16th of June 2025. Mayor of Colombo. NPP candidate Rekali Balthazar elected as the mayor of the Colombo Municipal Council. NPP secures leadership across more local government bodies. Sri Lanka's road to recovery. Visiting First Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Geeta Gopinath, highlights the importance of maintaining sound fiscal policy to safeguard Sri Lanka.
Sound fiscal policy is going to be very critical to make sure that Sri Lanka doesn't return to a crisis.
President says extended fund facility program will be the final instance Sri Lanka would need to seek such support from the IMF.
මේ ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය ආරම්භලත් එක්ක විස්තීර්ණ ණය වැඩසටහන ආපු අවසන් වැඩසටහන බවට පත් කර ගැනීම අපේක්ෂාවක් අපිට.
GDP growth. Sri Lanka's economy grew 4.8% year-on-year in the first 3 months of 2025, highlighting a deepening recovery from the worst financial crisis in decades. Middle East conflict. More deadly strikes exchanged between Israel and Iran, continuing for a fourth consecutive day. Sri Lankan embassy in Israel says communications ongoing with missions in the Middle East to safeguard Sri Lankans in the region.
Sinek Campus Open Day මේ මාස 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Sinek Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Enrolling now for the June 2025 intake and complete your degree in 2 years.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now taking you to your top story making headlines tonight, visiting First Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Geeta Gopinath, emphasized the importance of maintaining sound fiscal policy to safeguard Sri Lanka from slipping back into economic turmoil. She made these remarks speaking at the high-level conference on Sri Lanka's road to recovery, debt and governance this morning. Meanwhile, President Anura Dissanayake, who was also in attendance, expressed his aspiration that the current extended fund facility program will be the final instance Sri Lanka would need to seek such support from the IMF.
The high-level conference on Sri Lanka's road to recovery, debt and governance, co-hosted by Central Bank, the Ministry of Finance and the International Monetary Fund, commenced in Colombo this morning. The event saw the attendance of President Anura Dissanayake, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe and the visiting First Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Geeta Gopinath.
මතුපිටතලයේ ආර්ථික සාධකවල අපි ඉතාමත් ශක්තිමත් ස්ථාවර භාවයක් පෙන්වන්න කරනවා.
At present, our country has achieved a certain level of economic stability. However, the deep wounds of the crisis have not yet healed. The country requires the implementation of new economic reforms and transformations. We need a robust transformation in the machinery of state. Sri Lanka's energy and financial markets are relatively small, which poses the risk of monopolies forming. To counter this, the state must maintain a presence in key sectors. However, such state institutions must not be a burden to the public. Therefore, we must ensure that prices reflect actual production costs. At the same time, we will also strengthen the required mechanisms to reduce production costs. We are aware that there are low-income groups who cannot afford even these costs. We cannot simply ask them to endure the hardships in silence while we implement economic reforms and wait until the benefits reach the people. The state must provide relief to those groups during this period. Many small and medium enterprises collapsed during the economic downturn. We must provide targeted relief to help them recover. It is our aim to make this the final extended fund facility program undertaken with the IMF. By the year 2028, we aspire to build a stable economy with sufficient growth to service our debt independently. The ultimate outcome must be the restoration of our national sovereignty and self-reliance. This requires a strenuous and unwavering effort.
Goals not only to recover from the crisis and restore macroeconomic stability, but also to lay the foundation for a stronger, more resilient and more inclusive economy going forward. The sovereign debt restructuring process is nearing completion. It was made possible by close cooperation between the government, bilateral and private creditors, and multilateral partners. Restructuring of bilateral debt is completed. It will provide much needed fiscal space, easing our external debt service obligations. New pieces of legislation, especially the Central Bank Act, Public Financial Management Act, Anti-Corruption Act, and other important key legislations have been now introduced to strengthen institutional and regulatory framework relating to economic management of the country. A renewed focus on growth, resilience, and inclusion. While emerging risks continue to surface both domestically and globally, Sri Lanka has already proven that recovery is impossible through sound policies, strong partnerships, and broad-based commitment. To sustain this progress, it's imperative that we maintain our momentum and ensure inclusivity, transparency, and accountability in the reform efforts. The road ahead will demand a steadfast focus on sustaining the reform agenda, the empowerment of the private sector, protection of our most vulnerable communities, and above all, policy consistency in the same direction.
It is very substantial, the progress that has been achieved in Sri Lanka over a very short period of time, and nobody should take that for granted. Now, today, thanks to bold, courageous, difficult reforms, substantial progress has been made to bring back macroeconomic stability. There has been progress made in reducing those hardships. There were big milestones that were achieved. Our own analysis shows that if a comprehensive governance reform is undertaken in Sri Lanka, it can increase GDP by more than 7% over the next decade and reduce the debt to GDP by more than 6 percentage points. So these are very substantial gains that come from good governance. Because of the experience of Sri Lanka, we feel that future countries that come for debt restructuring will have an easier experience than what Sri Lanka went through, which was a really complex process. At the IMF, we will continue to work with the World Bank, the G20 presidency who takes part in the common framework, the Paris Club, everybody to make sure that this restructuring takes place on a timely basis and is done effectively. There is a lot that is still needed. The poverty rate is at 24.5% in 2024, according to the World Bank. It needs to be brought down as quickly as possible. This will require continued commitment to macro stability, but also successful implementation of structural reforms. Sound fiscal policy is going to be very critical to make sure that Sri Lanka doesn't return to a crisis. This time must be different. Let us ensure that this is the last IMF program Sri Lanka will have. We believe that is possible as long as Sri Lanka stays the course.
Visiting First Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Geeta Gopinath, held key engagements, including meetings with President Anura Dissanayake and Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe today. Discussions during the meeting with President Dissanayake focused on Sri Lanka's economic growth as well as the government's vision towards ensuring a sustained economic trajectory. Reaffirming recognition of Sri Lanka's substantial progress, the IMF delegation pledged to remain a steadfast partner in Sri Lanka's reform and recovery process.
The visiting IMF delegation, led by First Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Geeta Gopinath, called on President Anura Dissanayake at Presidential Secretariat this morning. During the meeting, President Dissanayake raised concern over the recent imposed US tariffs, noting their potential impact as approximately 25% of Sri Lanka's total exports are directed to the United States. Highlighting the challenges posed by ongoing global conflicts and their potential implication for Sri Lanka, President Anura Dissanayake noted that appropriate measures are being taken to manage and mitigate risks effectively. The discussions also focused on Sri Lanka's trade relationship with the European Union, which accounts for 23% of the country's exports, particularly the GSP Plus trade concession that allows preferential access to the EU market. President Dissanayake further emphasized his government's interest in expanding investment opportunities, stating that economic recovery would be driven through increased investor confidence. First Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Geeta Gopinath, acknowledged the strong mandate President Dissanayake received, which she noted enhances the government's ability to implement much-needed reforms. Dr. Gopinath also asserted the importance of sustaining and deepening the government's efforts implementing governance reforms. The IMF delegation reaffirms its recognition of Sri Lanka's substantial progress and pledged to remain a steadfast partner in the country's reform and recovery process. In the meantime, First Managing Director of the IMF, Dr. Geeta Gopinath, also held a meeting with Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe and discussed the central bank's crucial role in stabilizing Sri Lanka's economy. Taking to X, Dr. Gopinath noted that progress made under the central bank's reforms program, supported by the International Monetary Fund, was also discussed. Dr. Geeta Gopinath also met with the island nations' civil society representatives as well as think tanks.
Sri Lanka's economy grew 4.8% year-on-year in the first 3 months of 2025, indicating a deepening recovery from its worst financial crisis in decades. By latest official data released by the Department of Census and Statistics, the GDP for the first quarter of 2025 at constant price based on figures of 2015 has increased up to 3.47 trillion rupees. The figure was recorded at 3.31 trillion rupees in the first quarter of 2024. In the first quarter of 2025, agricultural activities reported a decline of 0.7%. However, industrial and services activities expanded by 9.7% and 2.8% respectively. Ray Kelly Balthasar, the National People's Power candidate, was elected the Mayor of Colombo today. She was elected following a secret ballot held during the Colombo Municipal Council's inaugural meeting. The new mayor received 61 votes, while the Samagi Jana Balawege candidate Risa Saruk received 54.
According to the results of the recent local government elections, no single party or independent group secured an outright majority in the Colombo Municipal Council. The National People's Power won 48 seats, while Samagi Jana Balawege secured 29, the United National Party 13 and the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna 5. Additionally, the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress received 4 seats, Independent Group Number 3 obtained 3 seats, Sarojana Bale secured 2 and the United Peace Alliance received 2. The remaining seats were distributed among 5 other political parties and 4 independent groups. To form a majority in the 117-seat Colombo Municipal Council, a party or coalition must secure at least 59 seats. In accordance with the Gazette notification issued by the local government commissioner for the Western Province, the newly elected members arrived at the Municipal Council premises this morning to attend the inaugural meeting of the Colombo Municipal Council. The meeting began at 9:30 am under the chairmanship of the local government commissioner. The primary objective was to elect the mayor and deputy mayor. 2 candidates were nominated for the position of mayor, Ray Kelly Balthasar from the National People's Power and Mohammad Riza Saruk from Samagi Jana Balawege. The local government commissioner then asked the council members whether they preferred an open vote or a secret ballot. While members from several parties, including the SJB and the UNP, advocated for an open vote, the National People's Power called for a secret ballot. Subsequently, a tense situation ensued within the council. However, both sides eventually reached a unanimous decision to proceed with a secret ballot to elect the mayor. In the subsequent ballot, Ray Kelly Balthasar was elected mayor of Colombo, receiving 61 votes. Her opponent, Mohammad Riza Saruk of the SJB-led opposition alliance, received 54. The NPP's Hemanta Kumara was elected as deputy mayor of the municipal council. Following the conclusion of the swearing-in ceremony, both ruling party and opposition councillors expressed their views on the proceedings.
කොළඹ නගරයේ ඉන්න ජනතාවටත් ජාතික ජන බලවේගයේ හැටියට අපිටත් මේක ඇත්තටම අතිවිශේෂ ජයග්‍රහණයක් ලොකු අධිෂ්ඨානයකින් ඉන්නේ දැන් අපේ වැඩපිළිවෙල ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න කොළඹ නගරයේ ජනතාවත් එක්ක අපේ ඉන්න മന്ത്രി ශක්තියත් එක්ක මේ නගරය ලස්සන කරන්න මේ නගරයේ ගැටලු ඉක්මනටම අපි පොරොන්දු වුණ පරිදි निराකරණය කරන්න
අනිත් පරිශ කියන මේ රහස් ඡන්දයකට යාම දූෂිත ක්‍රියාවලියක් කියලා
හැබැයි පනත අනුව තමයි අපි ක්‍රියා කරන්න මම හිතන්නේ ඉන්න නිලධාරීන් ක්‍රියා කරන්න උත්සාහ කරේ ඉතින් පනත අනුව තමයි නීති අනුකූලව තමයි අද හැමදේම වුනේ. සියලුම മന്ത്രിවරුන්ට තමන්ට කිසිම අගතියක් නොවන විදිහට තමයි මේ වැඩ කටයුතු අද සිද්ධ වුනේ. අපිට මොන ඡන්දෙ වුණත් එහෙම ගැටලුවක් නැහැ කියන එක අපි දිගටම කිව්වා.
ඒ කියන්නේ SJB එකෙත් മന്ത്രിවරුන්ගේ සහාය හම්බුණා කියන එක.
මම හිතන්නේ එක එක පක්ෂවල එක එක්කෙනාට විවිධ තීරණ ගන්න පුළුවන් ඉඩකඩක් තිබෙනවා.
නගරාධිපති තේරුණාට පස්සේදී
When it came to electing the deputy mayor following the mayor's election, all members voted unanimously despite party differences. This is the kind of political harmony we aspire to.
මේ දේශපාලන සංහිඳියාව අපිත් එක්ක සන්දානගත වෙච්ච
We did fall short of 7 votes that we had expected from minor political parties and independent groups. It appears there were some black sheep among us, but that's a common challenge in politics. This is a moment where our trust has been breached. Nevertheless, we will not back down. For the sake of public welfare, we will support any positive initiatives led by Mayor Balthazar in developing the city. We received 54 votes and accept the result. We will continue our political work in service of the public.
ඉදිරියට අපි දේශපාලනය කරනවා.
එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයෙන් අපෙන් 12 දෙනෙක් ඡන්දය පාවිච්චි කරා. ලිස්ට් එකක් තිබ්බනේ මේ 60කගේ ලිස්ට් එකක් තිබ්බනේ. මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ලිස්ට් එක අස්සම් කරන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් රහස් ඡන්දයකදී වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන් නේ.
එක්සත් ජනජ පෙරමුණේ මන්ත්‍රී දුරේ වෙනුවෙන් තමයි මම ආවේ. ඡන්දය අපි ලබා දීමේ වැළකී සිටියා.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa accuses the government of breaching official guidelines issued by the Ministry of Public Administration, Provincial Councils and Local Government on the appointment of heads of local government bodies. Delivering a statement this afternoon, the SJB leader declared that all appropriate measures will be taken to challenge what he described as a serious affront to democratic principles.
සභාපති උපසභාපති තෝරන
The Ministry of Public Administration, Provincial Councils and Local Government has officially issued the guidelines for electing chairman and vice chairman of local government bodies. However, it is evident that the current government has intervened to alter certain provisions outlined in this release. Some local government commissioners have arbitrarily modified these guidelines without due authority. How can the government justify ignoring a written request endorsed by 60 members of the Colombo Municipal Council calling for an open vote? We are resolute in our stance and will pursue necessary action against this violation of democratic principles.
ගත යුතු සියලුම පියවර ගන්නට අපි අදහස් කරනවා.
Meanwhile, representatives of several other political parties also expressed views on the election of the new mayor of the Colombo Municipal Council.
මේ තත්ත්වය පිළිබඳව පූර්ව විග්‍රහයක් අපිට තිබුණා.
We foresaw this result as our actions have always been grounded in reality. I consider this a landmark achievement made possible by the people of Colombo. We confidently assure the public that they will witness meaningful and tangible progress within the next 6 months.
මාස 6ක් යනකොට
ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණ
Today, the JVP revealed their true character to the world by actively participating in a backdoor, deal-driven political culture. Why was a secret ballot necessary? As of yesterday, when they assembled at the Presidential Secretariat, they had only 55 confirmed votes. The decision to resort to a secret vote was a clear admission that they lacked the confidence to secure a transparent victory. In the lead up to this election, the government repeatedly pledged that they would win by any means necessary. And true to their word, they did. However, it is important to note that the councillor in question has acted in breach of the law. Accordingly, we are prepared to initiate legal proceedings against them.
නීතිය පැත්තෙන් අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන් ක්‍රියාමාර්ගවලට අපි
පහුගිය අවුරුදු 75ක් 80ක් තිස්සේ
For the past 75 years, the Colombo Municipal Council has been under the control of corrupt leadership. Elements of the underworld have operated under the protection of certain councillors. Today, we have entrusted with the opportunity to restore order and integrity to the city of Colombo. We are committed to launching an effective and results-driven program to transform and develop Colombo. In just 2 years, we are confident that our ability to turn this vision into a tangible reality.
අපි කොළඹ ලස්සනම කරලා ගන්නවා අපිට අවුරුදු දෙකක් දෙයි.
Meanwhile, the National People's Power also succeeded in establishing power in several other local government institutions across the country today. Secret ballots were held in a majority of these institutions. However, tensions arose in the Kalpitiya Pradesh Sabha over the question of whether the ballot would be open or secret. The secret ballot for the election of the mayor of the Ratnapura Municipal Council was held at the Ratnapura Municipal Council auditorium today. National People's Power member KADRI Katugampala was elected the mayor with 14 votes, while the Samagi Jana Balawege's candidate only received 12. The secret ballot to elect the chairman of the Dambulla Pradesh Sabha was held this morning. 3 candidates were nominated from the National People's Power, Samagi Jana Balawege and the People's Alliance for the post of chairman. NPP candidate W.M. Tilakaratna was elected chairman, and accordingly the National People's Power succeeded in establishing power in the Dambulla Pradesh Sabha. Meanwhile, the Samagi Jana Balawege decided to suspend the party membership of 6 of its members representing the Dambulla Pradesh Sabha with immediate effect, citing that the councillors had not followed the decision of the party's management committee and working committee in the appointment of the chairman and vice chairman of the Pradesh Sabha. Meanwhile, the election for the chairman and vice chairman of the Kalpitiya Pradesh Sabha was also held today. A tense situation arose in the council when the local government commissioner asked whether the ballot would be a secret or an open ballot. In a secret ballot held on the basis of majority consent, Abdul Sattar Muhammadu Rikkas of the National People's Power was elected the chairman of the Kalpitiya Pradesh Sabha with 16 votes. His opponent Muhammad Ibrahim Muhammad Asik of the Samagi Jana Balawege was able to secure only 15 votes. The National People's Power was able to establish power in the Megahakula Pradesh Sabha with its member T.M. Kumaratissa being elected chairman via both a secret and an open ballot. Kumaratissa received 11 votes in the secret ballot but only 8 in the open ballot. Meanwhile, the National People's Power member who received 10 votes in a secret ballot was elected the chairman of the Valikanda Pradesh Sabha. Meanwhile, the Samagi Jana Balawege was able to establish power in the Ratnapura Pradesh Sabha with SJB member Nimal Munasinghe being elected its chairman via a secret ballot. Munasinghe received 23 votes while the NPP candidate only received 16. Meanwhile, during the election for the chairman of the Panduasnura Pradesh Sabha held on the 13th of June, Shriyanta Padmalal, a councillor elected from the Sarva Janabalaya, was not allowed to participate in the voting. This was due to his name not being gazetted as a member of the council. Padmalal, who protested in front of the Panduasnura Pradesh Sabha this afternoon, alleged he was not allowed to participate in the election on the instructions of the local government commissioner, despite his name being gazetted. Welcome back to First at 9. Now, Israel and Iran traded more deadly strikes early today as the conflict between the two countries entered its 4th day, raising concern that the region was headed toward a wider Middle East conflict. Both sides have threatened to unleash even greater force as the death toll continues to rise in both nations. Amid the rising tension in the region, Sri Lankan ambassador to Israel Nimal Bandara confirmed that 3 Sri Lankans in Israel were injured but are in stable condition. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Employment Arun Hemachandra claimed that Sri Lanka is in close communication with other missions in the Middle East to ensure the safety of Sri Lankans in the region.
Heightened open hostilities between Israel and Iran continued for a 4th consecutive day, with both sides firing waves of missiles overnight. Iran launched a new wave of missiles early today, striking an oil refinery in the Israeli city of Haifa and damaging parts of the power grid in central Israel. In a statement, the Israeli Prime Minister's office said that Iran had fired 370 ballistic missiles and hundreds of drones at Israel over the 4 days of conflict. According to the statement, the death toll in Israel has risen to 24 people, with 592 wounded. Of those injured, 10 are in critical condition. In Iran, meanwhile, 224 people have been killed and 1,277 hospitalized. As the conflict intensifies, civilians in Tehran are attempting to flee the capital in search of safety. The Israel Defense Force reported that Israeli Air Force fighter jets have struck command centers belonging to the Quds Force, a clandestine unit of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Iranian media reported that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps intelligence chief Mohammad Kazemi and his deputy Hassan Mohaqiq were killed in the strikes. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador in Israel Mike Huckabee confirmed that the U.S. Embassy branch in Tel Aviv sustained minor damage from a nearby Iranian missile strike during the exchange of fire, adding that no U.S. personnel were injured. During a cabinet meeting in Iran, President Masoud Pezeshkian warned that Iran would take an even tougher action against Israel if the attacks escalate.
اسرائیل هیچ مرزی رو نمیشناسه. هر کی رو دلش خواست با اجازه در حقیقت آمریکا هر مداخله‌ای رو انجام میده. در گفتگویی که ویتکوف با آقای دکتر عراقچی داشت، نیروی ارتش ما، سپاه قدرتمند ما و مردم عزیز دیدن پاسخهای مناسب تا حالا داده شده. خب هر چقدر اینا بخوان گسترش بدن طبیعتاً این پاسخها سخت‌تر و شدیدتر خواهد بود.
Amid escalating tensions, the Kremlin confirmed that Russia remains ready to act as a mediator in the conflict between Israel and Iran, and that Moscow's earlier proposal to store uranium in Russia remains on the table. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry stated that China is willing to play a constructive role in de-escalating the Israel-Iran conflict. US officials said that President Donald Trump had rejected a plan proposed by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his spokesperson have strongly denied such a plan. In a related development, Iran's foreign ministry announced that Iranian parliamentarians are preparing a bill that could lead Tehran to exit the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, while reiterating Iran's official stance against developing nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan ambassador to Israel, Nimal Bandara, commented on the situation concerning Sri Lankans living in Israel. Speaking to Ada Derana, the Sri Lankan envoy stated that 3 Sri Lankans were injured during the attacks. He added that one woman who was significantly injured visited the embassy and was referred for medical treatment. He further confirmed that the injured Sri Lankans are in stable condition. In addition, the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Employment, Aruna Hemachandra, addressed the media regarding the current situation in the Middle East.
As we know that there is an ongoing tense situation in the Middle Eastern region, and especially when it comes to Israel, there are around 20,000 plus Sri Lankans, those who are living there. When it comes to Iran, there are around 20 plus Sri Lankans, those who are living there. When there is a situation like this, the utmost priority of the government as well as the ministry is to safeguard our citizens and to provide adequate support to our citizens. So based upon that, we have taken adequate measures to address these issues. And also we are in a very close communication with the embassies in Doha, Abu Dhabi, Cairo as well as Amman. So we are trying our level best to safeguard our citizens and provide them with adequate support.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now in business news, the Colombo Bourse experienced another volatile trading session as heightened Israel-Iran tensions continue to rattle investor confidence. The benchmark all-share price index opened the week with a sharp decline driven by mounting concerns over the Middle East conflict. Although the index partially rebounded on the back of bargain hunting, it failed to fully recover the previous losses and closed the day in the red at 17,360, shedding 67 points. HNB Commercial Bank, LOLC, Haley's and CTC emerged as the top negative contributors to the index. Moreover, widespread selling pressure triggered broad-based price declines across most sectors. Amid subdued high net worth activity and relatively high retail investor participation, turnover amounted to 3.1 billion rupees, which is still 37.5% below the monthly average of 5 billion. The diversified financial sector dominated overall turnover with a 21% share, while the capital goods and banking sectors jointly accounted for 34% of total market turnover. Foreign investors remained net sellers with net outflow of 78.1 million rupees. Meanwhile, stocks and shares are up on both sides of the Atlantic as markets take a calmer view of conflict in the Middle East than at the end of the last week. The Dow Jones has opened over 400 points or 1% higher, with the S&P 500 also up 1% and the Nasdaq jumping 1.2%. They joined a worldwide rise in stock prices stretching from Europe to Asia. Stocks climbed 0.7% in Hong Kong and 0.3% in Shanghai after data showed stronger Chinese consumer spending for May but slower growth in factory activity and investment. South Korea's Kospi climbed 1.8% and Japan's Nikkei 225 rallied 1.3% for two of the world's bigger gains. The escalation in the Middle East came just as a group of 7 leaders were gathering in Canada, with US President Donald Trump's tariffs already straining ties. Later this week, the Federal Reserve is set to discuss whether to lower or raise interest rates, with the decision due on Wednesday. Oil prices, meanwhile, edged down after surging 7% on Friday as renewed military strikes by Israel and Iran over the weekend left oil production and export facilities unaffected. Brent futures were down 84 cents to $73.39 a barrel, while US WTI futures were off 91 cents to $72.07. Oil prices initially surged following Israel's attack, weighing on risk assets. Gold prices also rallied as the metal is considered a safe haven trade that investors flock to in times of market volatility. Both Brent futures and US WTI futures jumped more than $4 a barrel in Asian trading today before giving back gains. They settled 7% higher on Friday, having surged more than 13% during the session to their highest level since January. About a fifth of the world's total oil consumption, or some 18 to 19 million barrels per day of oil, condensate and fuel. About a fifth of the world's total oil consumption, or some 18 to 19 million barrels per day of oil, condensate and fuel, passes through the Strait of Hormuz, the only marine entryway into the Persian Gulf. It splits Iran on one side and Oman and the United Arab Emirates on the other. While markets are watching for potential disruptions to Iranian oil production due to Israel's strikes on energy facilities, heightened fears over a Strait of Hormuz blockade could sharply lift prices. Iran, a member of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, currently produces around 3.3 million barrels per day and exports more than 2 million barrels per day of oil and fuel. According to analysts and OPEC watchers, the spare capacity of OPEC Plus oil producers to pump more to offset any disruption is roughly equivalent to Iran's output.